So today we're going to take a look at step 3 of the Race Wizard, registration. Now, if you haven't seen step 1 or step 2, we'll link that below in the description. You can take a look at those videos there. Now, step 3 is where we're going to set up the registration periods, the dollar amount, and any additional registration settings that you may want to have. So to understand registration periods, think of it as dates you want specific pricing for. The most common situation is you'll often see is 6 months out, maybe the price of our half marathon is going to be $20, and 3 months out from the race, maybe we'll increase the price to $25. So here, this is where you can set up your registration periods. So in this example here, you can select the orange, add another registration period to add multiple registration periods. And you can see here what we've done is we've added 2 registration periods. So between September 27th, 2023 to July 7th, 2024, the cost of our half marathon is going to be $20. And then beginning July 8th, 2024 to July 8th, 2025, the price of our half marathon is going to go up to $25. Now, this is obviously a very, as far as time frame goes, a very large gap. Typically, this could be every 3 months you may have a price increase. But in our example, our race is 4 years from now, so we have a lot of time. Now, as just like a good FYI and a good little tip is we always recommend keeping your registrations open all the way through up until the race day. So our race date is July 7th, 2027. You theoretically can set the last registration close date to like July 1st, 2027. But because you're hosting registrations online, it doesn't really make any sense to close and lose potential registrations a week before your actual race date. These days, participants are registering on their phones, and oftentimes we'll see participants registering for the race as they're driving to the race.
Or being driven to the race, probably.
Yeah,
no,
or
nobody's on their phone while they're driving.
I mean, if you have a car that can drive itself. No, so we see a lot of participants that register for the race as they're on their way to the race. So you always want to make sure your registrations are open all the way up until the day of the race.
Now, if you happen to get to this page and you see that the event fee is grayed out, that just means that you set this as a free event in the previous step. So if you do want to put an event fee on that, you would go back to the event step and uncheck that free event and save those changes. And another thing, if you're setting up the same registration periods for multiple events, instead of doing it one event at a time, you can go up here to do modify multiple events. Select the events that have the same registration periods and add your registration periods through there. So I click copy to events, and now both events have the same information. That'll really help to save time if you have more than one event.
Now, if we select additional registration options, you'll have some additional settings that you can set up. For whatever reason, if you want to disable registrations, we'll see some races that may not be specifically using RunSignup for their online registrations. They'll disable registrations here and put in the alternate registration URL. And if you have a paper registration form, not sure why, but you could upload a registration form there and participants can access that form, print it out, and mail it via post office. You can also set the maximum number of participants. You can limit event registration by age. You can limit event registration by gender.
Now keep in mind that this limit event registrations by age, this has nothing to do with pricing. Sometimes people will accidentally set this up thinking that it's age-based pricing. So maybe they'll put in 0 to 12 so that children are given a special price. That's not what this field is doing. This would just limit your event so that only 0 to 12-year-olds can run in this half marathon. So in most cases, you're going to want to leave this blank, and this should be any gender.
And you can also set up a private event code. For most races, you will not want to touch this setting.
And we have a separate video that goes over this specifically, so if you want to watch that.
At the very bottom, you can also select specific fields that you want required for race participants. By default, we have all these checked on, but for whatever reason, if you don't want specific information to be collected that are required, you can uncheck certain things. And if we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see your waiver. This is where you can customize your waiver if you have specific verbiage that you want to include. By default, we've created a race waiver that we put in there for you, but you can certainly edit or add any additional verbiage that you need. There's also this setting here that requires, if participants are registering multiple people, that each registrant will agree to the waiver separately. This is where you can set up how registrants will agree to the waiver. They can have a checkbox, they can type in their name, type in their initials, so on and so forth. You can also set up additional requirements as far as having all of your participants scroll through the full waiver. And then you can also allow for registrants to skip the waiver during the registration process. They would be sent instructions after they've registered for how they can sign the waiver. And if you're allowing people to skip the waiver, you will also be prompted to potentially allow for only the primary RunSignup account holder to sign the waiver during registrations. Minors can also be signed. All others will be forced to sign later. If you want to set up additional waivers, we do allow for you to do that. You can set that up later on in your race dashboard. Once you've set up your waiver requirements, you can just select Save and Continue to move on to step 4 of the wizard.